And if the judges will now introduce themselves, please.
I don't think we decided who's going to go first, so I will leap in and introduce myself and ask the questions. Good morning. My name is Tandy McConnell. I spent about 20 years as a professor of history at Columbia College in South Carolina. Then I decided I want to do something really interesting, so I became a history teacher in public high school in South Carolina. And I am delighted to be here with you guys. I've been working with We the People for almost 20 years now, and it's always been fun and the highlight of my year.
Good morning. My name is Miriam Mamar-Sadeghi, and I participated in the We the People program the first year it was offered a long time ago on the bicentennial of the U.S. Constitution. It's really an honor for me to be with you. Today, I serve on the board of the Center for Civic Education, and I've spent a large part of my career focused on providing civic education to people living in the Middle East, and particularly in Iran, where I'm originally from.
My name is Michael DePiero. I'm coming from Tallahassee, Florida. I work for the state of Florida with the Florida Department of Education, right down the street from the Florida State Seminoles.
And would you introduce yourselves, please?
Hi, my name is Abby Bonnet.
Hi, my name is Victoria Tong.
Hi, my name is Jillian Martin.
Hi, I'm Chris Goldblatt.
And would you introduce your teacher, please?
Our teacher is Mr. David Pittman.
And we are honored to be here with you. As I said, we are your Unit 1 judges. We're interested in the philosophical and historical foundations of the American political system. We're asking, as you've probably already deduced, question 2. Parliament passed the Habeas Corpus Act of 1679. What is habeas corpus, and to what extent, if any, is it essential to the principle of limited government? How has the writ of habeas corpus evolved in the United States? And under what circumstances, if any, might the writ of habeas corpus place an unreasonable burden on the government? Please begin.
The most effectual protector of the liberty of the subject that any legal system has ever devised is the writ of habeas corpus, in historian Sir Holdworth's words.
As Pennsylvania District Attorney William Rawl declared, the writ of habeas corpus is the mode by which the judicial power speedily and effectually protects the personal liberty of every individual and repels the injustice of unconstitutional laws and despotic governments.
In 1215, the Magna Carta stated, "No free man shall be taken or imprisoned in any way except by the lawful judgment of their peers or by the law of the land, thereby guaranteeing protection from unlawful imprisonment." Enumerated in Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution, the writ of habeas corpus was introduced to be a flexible instrument of securing the liberty and republicanism of American citizens.
As the writ of habeas corpus is to protect citizens against arbitrary detention by the state, it is viewed by many scholars as a principle of limited government. In an effort to balance liberty and security, the government's powers had to be limited to prevent the possibility of any unlawful confinement of a citizen.
Thomas Jefferson stated, "The habeas corpus secures every man here, alien or citizen, against everything which is not law, whatever shape it may assume." Although the founders limited the power of Congress to ensure that right, they understood there would be instances where habeas corpus had to be suspended for the common good.
Benjamin Franklin, a staunch advocate of habeas corpus, wrote, "They who would give up an essential liberty for temporary security deserve neither liberty nor security. That is why Congress suspends this right only in grave circumstances."
The habeas corpus is not a narrow, static, and formalistic remedy, and must retain the flexibility to cut through various barriers of forms and procedural complexities by which a person may be imprisoned or detained.
Suspending habeas corpus during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln cited the Constitution in saying, "The privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless, when in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it." Ex parte Milligan, a Supreme Court case that found the president went beyond his legal rights to suppress dissenters during the Civil War, further challenged the definition of habeas corpus by establishing both Congress and the president can suspend the writ.
Habeas corpus has also been challenged during times of domestic peace. This evolution is presented in the Supreme Court case Boumediene versus Bush. A prisoner at Guantanamo Bay could not challenge his detention, and therefore claimed his right to habeas corpus was being violated. The Supreme Court voted in favor of the detainees, again changing the nature of habeas corpus. In the majority opinion, Justice Kennedy wrote, "The habeas court must have the power to order the conditional release of any individual unlawfully detained."
Habeas corpus continues to evolve and adapt to modern-day situations. After George Floyd's death, many Americans utilized their First Amendment right to protest. A state Supreme Court justice controversially suspended the writ of habeas corpus in New York City on the grounds that protests had devolved to riots. Hubert Plummer of the New York State Bar Association states, "New York's infringement on civil rights reaches a new low with the effective suspension of habeas corpus."
As John Adams stated, government is instituted for the common good, for the protection, safety, prosperity, and happiness of the people. By extension, the government is responsible for protecting the people through maintaining the writ of habeas corpus. With the advent of the Constitution, Americans enter a social contract with the government, regulated by a delicate balance between natural rights philosophy and classical Republican ideas.
While the burden of upholding and controlling habeas corpus is immense, it is not unreasonable. It is a necessary extension of the contract between the people and the state. Entrusting the protection of habeas corpus to the government is simply fulfillment of the governmental responsibility to protect the people. Habeas corpus acts as a way to challenge an executive abuse of power falling under the limited government established in the Constitution.
Despite its evolution, habeas corpus is still one of our most indispensable liberties. In the words of Alexander Hamilton in Federalist 84, the establishment of the writ of habeas corpus, the prohibition of ex post facto laws, are perhaps greater securities to liberty and republicanism than any the Constitution contains. Thank you. We're now ready for questions.
Thank you. And we do have a few questions to follow up with. You've presented an outstanding argument of the importance of the right of habeas corpus protections to citizens. Do the protections of habeas corpus extend to non-citizens in the United States, and particularly to non-citizens who might be here in a non-legal status? What's your opinion on that?
I think a good place to start is looking at the Military Commissions Act, which ruled that prisoners at Guantanamo Bay did not have the right to issue a writ of habeas corpus. However, that was later overturned in Boumediene versus Bush, where they realized that the detainees did have the right to habeas corpus. So I do think that the government upholds the fact that non-citizens in the United States or in a United States occupied territory do have the right to habeas corpus.
Currently, the Constitution also protects the rights of non-citizens on American territory. And what's interesting to look at is ex parte curin, which show that habeas corpus may be availed even in times of war by a person who is a citizen of an enemy power. So in that case, it was found that prisoners of war that were condemned by the US military on the ground that they entered the US as enemy sabotagers, they applied for habeas corpus. And they won that case because the court said that habeas corpus does apply to them as well.
Adding on to my colleague Victoria, key constitutional principles like due process and equal treatment under the law apply to non-citizens as long as they're on US soil. And so that those two laws go in hand with habeas corpus in ensuring that an individual is not being unfairly treated by the government or by the law.
Building off what Jillian said, when a person commits a crime on American soil, they are tried by the American justice system, which in turn gives them the same liberties that anyone being tried by the American justice system would pertain.
Great. Thank you so much. Miriam, you want to jump in?
You're muted, Miriam.
Sorry about that. How does habeas corpus make the United States a strong country? Do you think it makes us strong? There are countries like China, for example, and many others, unfortunately, where people who live in those countries or just visit or do business there don't have those protections, don't have due process protections. Does this set of rights make us a stronger country in general?
I agree that it does make us a stronger country in general because our country was founded on the principles in the Constitution of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the government has the responsibility to uphold the right to liberty, which I think is one of the essential functions of habeas corpus. And speaking about China, we've seen that since they don't have the right to habeas corpus, we've seen mass genocides through the Uyghur Muslims being detained unlawfully, and things like that would be less likely to happen if they had the right to habeas corpus.
Adding on to that, I think that the writ of habeas corpus shows that the country has a strong moral code and that the government has a foundation in morality, in that it's not just willing to be uncontested and do whatever it pleases over individuals that preside under it.
Okay, great. As far as commerce goes, trade, foreign investment, ingenuity, innovation, do you think it gives us an advantage?
I think it does. America has always served as like a beacon of freedom and hope to the rest of the democratic world. And so when we have these rights that extend to not only the people who live in our country, but those who visit it and those who seek refuge in it, it shows our economic partners that we are like a fair country and we are someone willing to do business in a just way.
To add on to my colleague Chris, I don't think commerce is the only way of measuring how strong a country is. As my colleague Jillian said, it also has to do with the moral code. And also you brought up China, which, like, although they have great commerce, their disrespect for human rights and democracy, as you can see in the protests in Hong Kong, show that even though they have a good commerce, like, their moral code and their justice system might not be up to par with the US.
Michael, go ahead.
So with all the positive support of habeas corpus here, should the Constitution just get rid of the ability to suspend it?
I think definitely not, because it has been shown multiple times in history that suspending habeas corpus has been extremely important to public safety and to the government. For example, during Reconstruction in South Carolina, habeas corpus was suspended due to the extreme presence of the Ku Klux Klan and the danger it posed to society.
I agree.
Oh, sorry, you could go.
Okay. I agree with my colleague Chris in saying that there should be a way for the government to suspend habeas corpus. However, there should be a stricter regulation in when they can suspend it, as we've seen recently in New York City when it was suspended due to the Black Lives Matter protests. And we agree that they should not have suspended it at that time, since there was not a great threat to public safety or any kind of insurrection to the government. However, it was not suspended during the riots on the Capitol, when there was actually an attempt to overthrow the peaceful transfer of power. So I think there definitely needs to be some kind of distinction and more of a regulation as to when the government should suspend it.
Adding on to what my colleague Chris said, in the Constitution, we see a balance between things like natural rights philosophy and common good. And for the principle of habeas corpus, there's a really delicate balance between liberty and security. So getting rid of the power to suspend habeas corpus would severely alter that balance.
So as a follow-up, we do see property damage and loss of life through multiple events for the past year. So given your examples as non-examples of when to suspend habeas corpus, when would be an appropriate modern time to suspend habeas corpus?
I think that an appropriate time to suspend habeas corpus would come when a certain event is preventing the government from carrying out its necessary functions in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So like, as we said, with the attacks on the Capitol, that would have been, in our opinion, an appropriate time to suspend habeas corpus because the actual function of the government and the democracy was threatened.
So what about a local government? So a police commission or a local courthouse can't carry out their function. Would that be an appropriate time?
I agree that if a state government was at risk of some sort of insurrection within that state, then the state government does have the responsibility to suspend habeas corpus.
It is important to keep in mind, however, that there is a difference between regular like violence that you would be punished for, that you don't need to suspend habeas corpus. For example, like when most crimes happen, habeas corpus is not suspended.
And thank you. Great place to end. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful conversation. You presented us with a solid understanding, supported by a great deal of evidence, and then you, as we asked you probing questions, you came up with example after example to defend your reasoning. So one of the questions that I thought about after it was probably too late was, what are the practical effects of suspending habeas corpus? Does that mean the government can put you in jail and forget about you? I think that's always been the greatest fear of governmental power, that as has happened in many oppressive governments, you simply disappear and you're discovered decades later decaying in a prison cell. So this is hugely important, and I really appreciate the thought that all of you put into it. So Michael, what do you think?
Very solid examples with everything. It wasn't, for example, you talked about the Bush case with Guantanamo Bay, but then you took it deeper to the MCA, and then you took it even deeper. So just very impressive. And yeah, it would have been, I wish we had more time. I would have loved to keep fleshing out where the suspension of habeas corpus may apply at the local and state level, especially you all in New York. It's probably a lot more affecting you than it is me down here in Florida, although I don't know where you are in New York, so maybe it's not. But it was interesting to hear you bring up New York in that.
I really enjoyed how much you guys knew and were able to call upon your knowledge. I would say advice for not just this unit, not just for this competition, but in general in life, you know your stuff. So when you make your claim, or when you make your statements, when you make your arguments, have more confidence about it, and be willing to go further into showing how strongly you feel about it, and show a little bit of passion, because it does affect how your argument is being perceived. You guys have so much to be proud of. And, I wish you the best moving forward, and congrats to your teacher too, Mr. Pittman.
Yes, congratulations to you guys for participating and being here. And wonderful job. Thank you guys.